We're up to 1988, and there were a number of series I could have gone with. I could have gone with Boston and Washington, or Boston and New Jersey, I should say. But I'm going to go with the second round meeting between the Washington Capitals and the New Jersey Devils. The New Jersey Devils had been called a Mickey Mouse franchise by Wayne Gretzky. And it was a nickname that really stuck because they were a bad team for a nice long while. Now, they tried to tank their way to Mario Lemieux. They ended up finishing just above Pittsburgh, so they ended up getting Kirk Muller instead. This was a season that saw the Pittsburgh Penguins miss the playoffs, which was to the benefit of teams like Washington and New Jersey, because Pittsburgh, if they'd made the playoffs, would have been dangerous. Now, for the Capitals, they had home ice advantage in this series, although much like other series I've shown you, home ice doesn't really mean anything in the playoffs. The more I go through these series, the more I'm like, you know what? Home ice has never really mattered. So 38, 33, and 9 is the overall record for the Capitals. 281 goals for, 249 goals against. And they were just coming off of a big upset win over the Philadelphia Flyers in 7. And it would have been seen as an upset because the Flyers had gone to the Stanley Cup Final in 1987. And Hextall was on his way up, all this other wonderful stuff. And for Pete Peters, a goaltender who had been in Philadelphia before, had to feel pretty good to knock the Flyers out. On the New Jersey side, they're 38, 36, and 6. Good record, good team. And there had been a storyline down the stretch that everybody was talking about. Sean Burke. Way before we had Andrew Hamm and the Hamburglar, Sean Burke helped lead the New Jersey Devils to the playoffs. They scored 295 goals. They allowed 296. So, yeah, kind of mediocre numbers overall that season. Round 1, they beat the New York Islanders in 6, which was an absolute shocker. Yes, the Islanders were in decline. And everybody knew that this was no longer the team that had won 4 in a row. This is 4 years past after that. But still, for New Jersey to knock them out in the first round, everybody took notice. And then in the third round, New Jersey would famously lose in 7 to Boston. I will touch on that at the end of this video because it is very noteworthy what happened during that series, even though, again, much like yesterday's where I talked about the incident that took place before the game started in Game 6 between Philadelphia and Montreal, in the case of Jim Schoenfeld, coach of the New Jersey Devils, what everybody talks about didn't occur during a game. So Game 1 in Washington, and the Capitals look good early. The Capitals look like they're ready to take that step out of the second round. And for the Washington Capitals, they're kind of known as a team that struggles to get out of the second round in the 80s and all the way through until about 2 years ago. Mike Ridley would score at 7:18 to make it 1-0 for Washington, however, and that's your only goal in the first period. Second period, power play goal for Larry Murphy. Bent Gustafson with the assist at 3:29. Gustafson gets on the board again with a helper. Scott Stevens with the goal. Larry Murphy and Gustafson with the helpers at 16:48. So it's 3-0 Capitals after 2 periods. In the third period, Tom Kerver scores from Verbeek and Aaron Broughton at 9:49. Brother to Neil Broughton. And Burke saves 28 out of 31, played well, but Peters at the other end is better. 33 saves on 34 shots for Pete Peters. And remember, he had been in Philadelphia, he had been in Boston, now he's a Washington goaltender. So we go into Game 2, home ice advantage still belongs to the Capitals, and it's gone. New Jersey Devils beat them 5-2 in that game. Power play goal by Broughton from Curvers and Driver at 9:37. Mike Ridley would tie it, however, from Dale Hunter and Scott Stevens at 13:15. So yes, Scott Stevens on the blue line for the Washington Capitals, Larry Murphy. If only they've been able to keep that together. Second period, Aaron Broughton scores from Kirk Muller at 3:02. And then it's a power play goal for Aaron Broughton from Driver and Verbeek at 5:23. This is still at a point where Aaron Broughton was thought to be a pretty decent young player. And he never quite reaches the ceiling that was envisioned for him. Power play goal then by Larry Murphy to make it a little closer. Ridley and Gartner with the assists at 17:45. But then Verbeek restores the 2-goal lead from Muller and Broughton at 18:14. So it's a 1-goal lead for about 30 seconds. Third period, power play goal for Patrick Sundstrom, who's just getting warmed up. You're welcome, New Jersey, say all the Vancouver fans. He gets a goal from Mark Johnson and Joe Cirella at 12:49. Johnson was one of my favorite players in the NHL at this stage. There's 162 penalty minutes in this game. These teams don't like each other. This is why when they went back to divisional playoffs, there were those of us who watched divisional playoffs in the 80s that said, boy, I'm so glad they're going back to divisional playoffs. Because these teams really hated each other by the time the playoffs rolled around. Burke, 28 saves on 30 shots in the win. Peters, 25 saves on 30 shots in the loss. So we go into game 3 in New Jersey. The Capitals start Malarchuk. Right? So, yeah, every now and then a coach would actually go with the other goaltender. This was a different age. And New Jersey punishes Malarchuk, punishes the Capitals, and this is absolute slaughter. And it would get ugly on the ice. There would be an incident in this game where there's some jousting going on with sticks, and Brendan Shanahan finds himself suspended for Game 4. So, Game 3, power play goal in the first for Johnson from Danico and Sundstrom at 10:37. There is no hint of what's going to happen. There's no hint of the amazing game that Johnson and Sundstrom are going to put together. And a moment of silence for Mark Johnson, who had a great game, and it's overshadowed by what Sundstrom did. There's your moment of silence. Johnson gets the second power play goal from Sundstrom and McLean at 15:07, so it's 2-0 New Jersey. But before the period's over, power play goal for the Capitals, Dave Christian from Greg C. Adams and Scott Stevens at 18:22. There were 2 Greg Adams in the NHL at this point. Gus Adams in Vancouver and Greg C. Adams, who at this point's in Washington. The only reason we had to start calling them Gus and Greg C. is because the Canucks had both for a very short period of time. Second period, Patrick Sundstrom gets his third point of the game from Claude Loisel at 57 seconds. Loisel then decides, I'm going to score shorthanded, and he does, 2 minutes and 1 second in. So it's 4-1 New Jersey, 2 minutes into the second period. But defense is optional, clearly. Washington records 3 of the next 4 goals, starting with Murphy from Pivonka and Dale Hunter at 6:51. Gartner then scores at 9:50 to make it a 1-goal game, before Andreas Karlsson scores from Sundstrom at 11:39. Sundstrom with another point. He's up to 4. Murphy would score from Gustafsson at 13:57. It's then Doug Brown's turn from Danico at 15 minutes and 33 seconds. Danico's in for a big night too, and that makes it really strange. Because Ken Danico, and I think he'd admit this, you can ask Ken if you want, I'm pretty sure he's probably sitting around like the rest of us. He can probably answer this if he wants to. Yeah, he was not known really as a point scorer during his career, but he's in for a big night. Because Sundstrom scores from Sorella and Danico at 19:45, and it is a 7-4 game in favor of the New Jersey Devils after 2. Third period, did the Devils sit on that lead? No. Johnson gets the hat trick goal from Sundstrom at 2:59. He's not satisfied there. They get a power play in and amongst all the fighting and everything else that's going on in this game. Sundstrom and McLean with the assists as Sundstrom gets his 7th point of the game. That's at 9:47. How many points did McLean have in this one? Just a couple? Yeah, he was lazy. He only had 2 assists in this game that I'm counting. Man, what's going on there? Come on, McLean. And then Sundstrom scores his hat trick goal from Ken Danico at 14:14. Mark Johnson, 4 goals. Ken Danico, 4 assists. Patrick Sundstrom, 3 goals, 5 assists. You're welcome, New Jersey, for Patrick Sundstrom. 231 penalty minutes in this game. Not in the series, in this game. Malarchuk saves 14 out of 21. Pete Peters goes in. He saves 7 out of 10. At the other end, Sean Burke saves 28 out of 32. I really hope I don't say Brian at any point when I'm talking about Burke. It would be easy enough to accidentally do that. Brian Burke wasn't a goaltender in the NHL. Sean Burke was. So that makes it a resounding 10-4 victory. And now New Jersey's up 2-1. So we go to Game 4. Home ice doesn't mean anything. Game 4 shows it again. As early on, there's a power play for New Jersey, and they score. Curvers from Sundstrom and Johnson at 3:12. Sundstrom, Johnson, they're going to do it again. Here we go. Power play goal starts off the game, but Washington answers. Dave Christian from Pivonka and Hatcher at 3:55. So not only did they answered within a minute. We then see Sundstrom score. This is Peter Sundstrom, Patrick's twin brother. Yeah. So there's a Sundstrom on each side of the ice. Korovo and Hunter with the assists at 11 minutes and 2 seconds. And it's 2-1 Washington after 1. Second period. Now we're into the second. And Christian scores the second of the game from Kelly Miller at 9 minutes and 11 seconds. Kelly, the first of many Miller brothers to play in the NHL. You like any relation to Ryan? Why, yes. And then in the third period, it is Dale Hunter with a power play goal from Hatcher and Ridley at 8 minutes and 45 seconds. Cooler heads kind of prevail. We only have 88 penalty minutes in this game. Only. Keep in mind, there was a game between Boston and Tampa Bay recently where I talked about the penalty minutes, and I don't think it was much higher than 88. And that's much, much lower. That's about half of what we saw in Game 2 and about a third of what we saw in the third game in this series. So it cools down a bit. Peters saved 11 out of 12. Malarchuk saved 13 out of 13. So Peters ends up leaving the game with an injury, I do believe, in that game because he only allowed one goal. And Burke saved 27 out of 31 at the other end of the ice. So, yeah, we go to game 5. This is in Washington. Home ice means nothing. New Jersey scores in the first period. It's Kirk Muller at 16:36. That's his first of the playoffs. Took him a while to get going. And Kirk Muller, one of the best players for New Jersey at that stage. Second period, it's Tom Kurvers on the power play. Kurvers was very good on the power play. Kurvers was suspect defensively, and I think numerous teams found that out, but he was very, very good offensively. Kind of an Tony DeAngelo light. I can't say Anthony. I can't. I've been saying that for years, but man, Ranger fans, and they'll jump on me and they'll say it's Tony. But his birth name's Anthony. So anyways, Tony DeAngelo light is what I would qualify Kurvers as. Muller and Verbeek with the assists at 6:54. So in Washington, after 2, it's 2-0 New Jersey. Ridley scores unassisted at 10:24 to make it a one-goal game, but not for long. Kirk Muller scores the second of the game from Pat Verbeek at 13:26. Yep, little ball of hate's on the board there with a couple of helpers, and New Jersey takes a 3-2 series lead. Now they're going back home, and they can end it. Sauvé. Yeah, Bob Sauvé played this game. 28 saves on 29 shots. I'm as surprised as you are to see Bob Sauvé's name on the board. And Malarchuk at the other end, 28 saves on 31 shots. In the only game he would start in this series that he didn't get. Well, no, he lost both. So, yeah, he lost that one too. So, all right. So, Malarchuk's record in this one's not great. He was one of my favorite goalies. This series, not one of his great shining moments. But, of course, for Washington, it wasn't either. He'd end up in... Is this before or after? Anyways, I'm going to have to do a career Clint Malarchuk if I haven't done it already. Because he really was one of my favorite goaltenders. But Sauvé gets the win in this one. And we move on to Game 6. Yeah, so this is the first series that doesn't fit onto one board. So for people at the start, might have been like, there's only 5 games in there. And I think that was a 7-game series. Yeah. So Game 6 in New Jersey. New Jersey can end it with a victory. So, of course, Washington wins here because home ice means nothing. Loisel scores at 18 seconds. So he gives New Jersey fans hope, and then it's taken away. At the 6-minute and 40-second mark of the first period, Ridley scores from Pavanka and Murphy. So Larry Murphy had a good series. Power play goal then for Murphy from Stevens and Christian at 13:07. Leach would then score from Stevens at 17:03. So Stephen Leach on the board, Scott Stevens with a couple of helpers. It's 3-1 Washington after 1. Second period, Capitals don't let up. Corvo gets a goal at 10:43, and then Christian scores from Gartner at 17:48. Makes it 5-1 Capitals after 2. Third period. Do they stop? No. Because no. These teams hate each other at this point. Why stop? Kelly Miller scores shorthanded from Scott Stevens at 5:25. David Maley would answer back from Jim Korn and Doug Sullivan at 7:21. See, this is part of the reason why I get names all mixed up now. I remember all these names. There's not enough room in my brain for all the names of players now. I apologize. It's only going to get worse. Power play goal then for Gartner from Stevens and Murphy at 18:32. That makes it 7-2. Not that the Maley goal necessarily made anybody nervous. Peters saved 25 out of 27 in the win. Burke saves 13 out of 18 before Sauvé replaces him. Sauvé saved 11 out of 13. So they went back to Burke. Didn't work. But we go to Game 7, and they go back with Sean Burke. Game 7 in Washington. It would have been understandable if they went with Sauvé, to be honest. Sauvé had won Game 5 in Washington, so maybe you go with Sauvé. Nope, they're going with Burke. And this is where he becomes really a true hero for New Jersey Devils fans. In the first period, New Jersey doesn't wait. First minute, much like last game. This time it's Kirk Muller from Broughton and Verbeek at 14 seconds. And then at 12:01, Claude Loisel scores from Bruce Driver and Joe Sorella. So Bruce Driver on the board again. Good offensive defenseman for New Jersey, Bruce Driver. Second period, and the Capitals eat into that lead. First, it's Ledyard from Hatcher and Adams. That's Kevin Hatcher at 15:21. And then Gary Galley. Yeah, the guy you see on Hockey Night in Canada all the time. That's him. 6 seconds left in the second period, and he ties it up. Unassisted. Gary Galley. Third period, it goes pretty scoreless until 13:49 into that third period. John McLean, there he is. After taking the night off when it comes to goals with that 10-4 victory, he gets the game-winning goal of the most important game in New Jersey Devils franchise history to get them out of round two. Wolanin and Johnson with the assists at 13:49. Burke saves 30 out of 32 in the victory. Peters saves 23 out of 26 in the loss. And the Capitals, again, this is that reputation for not being able to win the big games and losing in round two and losing at home in game sevens as well. Koharski versus Schoenfeld was in the next round. That was after game three between the Boston Bruins and the New Jersey Devils, where have another donut, you fat pig, became the big thing. That at the time, New Jersey didn't think anybody was going to make anything of, but since there was one camera crew that caught it on tape, of course, there was calls for Schoenfeld to be suspended, that Schoenfeld had pushed Koharski. Schoenfeld didn't touch him. Koharski slipped. But we ended up with linesmen and referees that weren't NHL level. Like, I had thought about doing that series, but this one was honestly, with the one I remembered, actually a little bit better. This, and again, even though I was a Bruins fan in '88, and I was excited to see them go to the Stanley Cup final, this series was fantastic as well. The Sean Burke story was just such a good story, and it was a really good story for a franchise that needed it. New Jersey needed a run. They desperately needed to show, hey, we're not the Mickey Mouse franchise anymore, and they did it at the expense of the Washington Capitals. So there you go. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. And this has been the 1988 second round series between the Washington Capitals and the New Jersey Devils. Thank you guys so much for all your support. I'll talk to you again soon.